So we'll post those on our Facebook page. We had a lot of people in the Millionaire Month Club. We had some best months ever. So Julie and Brett had their very highest month ever in real estate in like 15 years.
Been a while.
Ever in June. So are we telling ourselves the story that there's not any business because of COVID? Or are we out there taking the business? Because there's a lot of people right now, you guys, living in the storyland of there's no business. So we can decide that there's no business, or we can go out and take all the business we want, and we're never going to get that market share back. Remember, it's like the mind share. Once you've got it and you stay in there, you're constantly top of mind. It's the same thing with market share. Right now, go take it. It's yours. Let everyone else tell the story of how it's so slow and they're having such a hard time and they can't make any money because of COVID. Let them tell that story. We don't have to tell that story, right? So go take the listings. Congrats to all of our top performers. We will post you on our Facebook page. And want some link needs, we'll go also on the Facebook page. If you have any broker questions, we're even going to skip broker moment today because we want to get Marcus all the time.
Sorry, Sean.
Unless there's anything social, you don't have that right now. Okay, one quick reminder that I want to give, because we have this check. I just randomly came to the office one day. It's a referral. It came from Tennessee. Nobody let anyone know there's a referral coming, and we just really want to pay somebody the money in this referral. So, quick reminder, if you have referrals, you got to let somebody know a referral is coming. Ideally, that would be Chris or Alex. It could be a quick email, text, however you want to. You can write a note. You can stick it on a Post-it. Just say, hey, I have a referral coming from Tennessee. This is the buyer's last name or the seller's last name, and then we'll get you paid. So if you have a referral that you're expecting, if you haven't seen it yet, chances are we might have it. We just don't know who belongs to you. So make sure you send it in, okay? Is there anything else that Alex, Chris, that I forgot that we need to cover? Okay, I'm going to erase the board. I'm going to turn the title over to Marcus.
Did Sherry take a picture of it?
What?
Did Sherry take a picture of it?
I did. Thank you.
Okay, how about a round of applause for Russie? It feels really good to be in a room with people. This is I'm like, I got nerves. Like, how long has it been since I've been in a room full of people? Not really. I'm really not nervous. How's everyone feeling? Good, right? Is that like do we really feel good, or is that like the preconditioned response of like, I'm good? Like, I don't know what to say, right? I think there's some of that going on where we feel good, things are going on. We're busy. How many of you feel very busy right now, right? It's interesting, to Russie's point earlier, and I'm kind of in the same position as Russie, we get the opportunity to talk to a lot of people, a lot of agents on a regular basis. And people's ability to hide as an agent 6 months ago, it was easy to hide and be successful in our industry. There's a huge gap happening right now with real estate professionals. It's really interesting to me, within the same 30 minutes, I can be on a call with one of our top producers that's like, I am so busy. I've got so much stuff going on. I'm pulling my hair out. I need to figure out how to leverage. And literally, I'll hang up that phone call. My phone will ring, and it's another agent saying, the world's coming to an end. Nobody wants to talk. Nobody wants to talk about real estate. People get offended if I bring up real estate. Like, the idea behind this broadening of the type of conversations that we're having, or our beliefs around the market, is widening. And there's less of these people kind of hanging out in the middle of, I'm just waiting for business to come to me, if that makes sense. And so we're gonna talk about, you're late. We saved seats right in the front for you. You guys didn't hear at the beginning, I told the people that sit in the front row are going to have to actually participate in the program. So that's why those seats were open. Not really. You have to be patient with me today. My humor's gone down over time as I've been stuck in front of Zoom for the last 4 months. So I'll elevate my jokes.
He was really funny before.
I was. At least I thought I was. So today what's going to happen is I'm going to give you the statistics of what's happening in the market, and we're going to have some conversation around what does that mean, and how do we take a number or a series of numbers and have conversation around them. Because the answer that the consumer is looking for right now isn't for you to call and say, oh, the statistic is 24% or this many homes sold. They don't need a number. A number doesn't answer a question for them. But what does answer a question for them is us asking the right questions, creating the right conversation, and then delivering the validity of the conversation with data, if that makes sense. And that's what journey we're going to go through today. So as I started thinking about the theme of our conversation today, two words kind of came to my mind: certainty versus uncertainty. Go back 6 months ago. Did people live more in certainty or uncertainty 6 months ago? Certainty. So let's talk specifically, and that goes across all things in life, but let's talk specifically around the real estate market. 6 months ago, when you called a client, or in a lot of cases they called you, did they have a pretty good understanding of what they believed the market was doing? In fact, a lot of times they'd call and say, I want to see this house in this neighborhood. I think it's a good deal, or houses are selling for this price, right? They had some idea around, or at least they believed they had an idea around what was going on in the market. Everybody was an expert. Has that changed right now? Have people moved away from certainty? They're now living in uncertainty. Uncertainty means I don't know what's going on. I've got questions on how to address the market. I want to know how this applies to me. And I'm going to show you some examples of why uncertainty is creeping into our marketplace. And realistically, to some extent, both certainty and uncertainty, on both extremes, have been our enemy. What I mean by this, if you think about certainty, where people were before, they were safe, secure, settled, they were same old, they were in a routine. In that safety, they started thinking, I can do this on my own. I don't need a real estate agent. I know what I'm doing. I watch HGTV. I'm a pro, right? You went to school for 120 hours for a real estate license. I watched 120 hours of HGTV in the last 2 weeks, right? So they felt safe, secure, settled. So in some ways, it was hard to get people to move or lean into our advice and counsel in certainty. Go all the way to the other side of uncertainty. And I feel like a lot of people are living right here, right now. Anxiety, worry, doubt, danger. I have some fear around what's going on. Part of what we're going to talk about and what we're going to take with the data is how do we get people into this center area and get them in a place of curiosity, a place of seeking to understand, a place that they want to learn. They want some experience. They want to grow. They want to see what is the opportunity for me. And this, to me, is one of the biggest challenges we have right now is, for example, Tanil, you've sold a lot of houses in the last several years. Have you ever sold a house to a client that they didn't, or sold a house for a client, you were the listing agent, where they didn't have some idea what they were doing next? No, right? No one signs at the closing table and just like, what are we going to do? Yeah, everyone knows what the transaction of buying a house or selling a house is getting them closer to something they want to accomplish. Well, one of the biggest problems right now is, as we're going to illustrate today, is we have a major inventory problem, right? Supply is so short, demand remains high, but the problem is people can't see beyond the transaction of what does that mean for me? Where does that get me? Where do I want to go? Because if we're just pushing for the real estate transaction, buy a house or sell a house, they could or could not be interested in that. But if they don't have clarity on how that gets them to where they want to go, they're not going to pull the trigger. So that is the skill set we have to work on right now is creating a path, which we're going to talk about. This gives a perfect example of why there's so much uncertainty or fear in the market right now. I went to Google and just typed in U.S. economy. Let's read some headlines that came up. Fiscal cliff threatens fragile U.S. recovery. Economy week ahead. This is yesterday. U.S. economy faces significant risks. Long road to recovery. U.S. bank earnings signal bad news about the U.S. economy. 1.3 million more people file for unemployment. Warning for the U.S. economy. Nobody knows what's coming next. U.S. workers. The economy will suffer with end of federal pandemic. U.S. economy might be condemned to relive the 70s. This is what people are seeing. There's some positive. How come that wasn't at the top, right? So here's the point I'm trying to make with this is, does each one of these news articles reflect reality? somebody's reality, right? So, and a lot of times is with news, do they have an agenda? Realistically, nobody's reporting news, which is like, I am going to report news to report news. Everyone's got an agenda of what they're trying to accomplish, right? But literally, this is from top to bottom. Everything came up. There's not one positive article around our economy. Why? Yeah, nobody's gonna. They get paid on clicks. If the headline reads, "Real estate team had best month ever in June," no one's gonna click that and be like, "Ooh, I want to hear some good news." But however, people are gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna lean into fear. I need to know what's going on. I'm scared." They lean into that and start playing in this world. But the point I'm trying to make right now is, number one, congratulations to this group for taking the time to better your skill and better understand what's going on. But this is what your clients are doing. Their habit right now is, I've got a question. The first thing they're going to do is, I want to ask Google or I want to ask Siri. They've trained themselves, that's where they go, and this is the answer they're getting. And so part of what we need to accomplish is the idea of creating this path. I know this is a silly picture, but our clients are sitting right here and they don't know what to do. And so they're going to that source, a Google or a Siri, and they're getting bombarded with information that may have some truths or reality for someone, but it's not specific to their specific situation. This to me is where the value of a real estate agent is more critical than ever. The truth is, there's 25,000 plus real estate agents in the state of Utah. They can all figure out how to fill out a contract. Now, I know we could argue there's people that do it better than others, but anyone can fill out a contract. If they go to Sean's class, they do it much, much better. But the idea behind this is that the agent that's going to set themselves apart is the one that can meet them at this intersection, find them at this intersection, and ask the right questions to say, not, hey, this path is for you. It's, let's discover together which path is for you. Because that is our job. Our job is not to hunt commissions. Our job is to get clarity of what people are trying to accomplish and show them the path on how to get it. The transaction, again, is how does that get them closer to where they want to go? If we don't know how to figure out where they want to go, and this is one of our biggest challenges right now. 6 months ago, people came to us and said, this is what I want to accomplish, and all we had to do is facilitate the transaction. Now, we've got to increase the skill set of saying, let me help you get clarity on what you want to accomplish. And then secondarily is, does a real estate transaction right now help you get there? And sometimes the answer is going to be no. We got to be okay with that. But a lot of times the answer is going to be yes. So let's talk about some of the uncertainty that's living inside of our clients' minds right now. This isn't a full inclusive list, but these are some things that popped into my head of questions that they're asking right now. Is my job secure? Is there going to be another shutdown? Like a lot of you may not know, California is already shut down again. All restaurants, all gyms, all salons, done. They're closed again. Which a lot of us were thinking that would happen again sometime this fall, but it's accelerated in California, may happen again here. What is happening to the value of my home? Is the government going to do another stimulus package? To me, this is something that we really need to focus on, because the stimulus packages that come out have created a false health to our market, that if something doesn't happen behind it, meaning the economy continues to strengthen, or if there's another shutdown and there's not another stimulus that comes behind it, people are going to react differently to the next shutdown. So these are things that we need to be aware of. And when we meet someone at the intersection, be ready to talk through, how does this apply to you? The other big one, why not throw a crazy election on top of all this? Of what does that look like, right? There's going to be significant changes depending on who wins the presidential election this fall that affects everything we do. So these are all things that we've got to know how to have conversations around. And let me be clear today, I'm not going to pull out a crystal ball and say, hey, this is who's going to win the election, and this is when another shutdown is going to come. We don't know. But not knowing doesn't give us an excuse not to go create the conversation. Because not knowing doesn't mean we need to stick our heads in the sand and wait. For the majority of our clients, some action still is better towards the general direction of where they want to go than no action. So this is the two things I want to overlap as a theme today, and we're going to talk, and I'm going to pull back into the conversation as we touch on these statistics. Is number one is, how do I take people from uncertainty, and what uncertainty do they live in, and how do I move them towards the middle of introducing some certainty into their world, and how do I create the path? The end destination is not the transaction, but how do I create the path or clarity on the path, and we'll self-discover together, is there a real estate transaction that must occur in this path? That make sense? So obviously what's going on in any economic situation all comes back to supply and demand, right? And so if you had to pinpoint where we're at in that graph with supply and demand, where are we right now? So where would you say we're somewhere in here? Low supply, big demand. We've got a gap, right? A perfectly balanced market is when supply perfectly meets demand. Generally speaking, how many months inventory is that the government's looking for a perfectly stable market? 6, right? The government says 6. For me personally, I like to see between 4.5 months would be a more balanced market to me. Right now, we know we're at 2.5 months supply, and we know we've got a lot of pent up demand for that. So let's talk about I'm going to start the conversation today specifically around what does supply and demand look like, and then we're going to break down how are people approaching demand and how are they approaching supply. How do we fix the problem in our economy by addressing demand separately than supply? Because a lot of times we say we're too used to saying supply and demand together because they sound good, but we got to look at them separately. Okay, if we have a supply issue right now, what specifically can I do to affect supply? If we have a demand, an over demand, what can I do to address the demand? What is driving demand? And can we foresee that there's going to be a change in demand based on some fiscal policy and things that are going to change? So that's kind of where we're going to break this down. Let's start here with this conversation. Right now, this is, notice anytime there's red on it at the bottom, it's going to say Davis County or Weber County. And then we'll talk about some things specific to the state. So here in Davis County, right now, the blue line shows active listings and trends them month over month. The red line shows pending listings. It was really interesting. I don't know how many of you were in the quarterly market update when we were talking right here. For the first time in history, pending listings outpaced active listings. And I remember everyone was like, is this like a sign that the world's ending? This has never happened before. What does this mean? And we all looked at this like, this is crazy. We saw this happen, a new trend set where it happened or year over year, kind of happened that same thing. Pending listings outpaced active listings until last year. We started talking about, is this going to normalize? For the first time, they converged and broke where pending listings did not outpace active listings. However, we can see that we've had right now with what's going on in the world is we have the biggest gap between pending listings and active listings, even bigger than back here when we thought the world was ending from an economic standpoint. Look at this, active listings in Davis County down 53% from where it was a year ago. While the same, well, let me ask this question. Don't look at the pending listings. If a client, I know you guys are smarter than this, but if one of your clients, all they saw was active listings are down 53%, what is the conclusion they draw around the market? There comes the end. Nobody wants to sell their house, right? Nobody is getting the price they want on houses, so no one's listing their house. So one of the biggest challenges we have is you got to remember the majority of your clients are not students of the market. So what they're doing is they're getting their hair done somewhere, and the person next to them is having a 30-second conversation around real estate, and they say one statistic, man, there's nobody listing their houses right now. And then they move on and talk about who Brad Pitt is dating or something like that. What do they talk about at Swamp? I don't know. But they move on. But that person all of a sudden takes that to the bank. They're basing their whole premise of the strength of the economy off that one statement. So the point I'm making with this is today, if one statistic jumps out at you, it's not the whole story. This is where our value comes into play, is if we understand how the statistics play into each other and we can have a conversation to tie them together, we create the path. We create the clarity, and this is our value. So let's look at this though. because interesting, active listings is down 53%. Pending listings is up 16.35%. Sorry, Jackie, will you mute whoever that is? Thank you. Pending listings is up 16.35%. How is that a possibility? The active listings are down 53%, but pending listings is up 16.35%. This would indicate that we have a lot of pent-up demand. What's happening to pricing right now? It's interesting. Do people feel like their disposable income is less than it was 6 months ago? Yeah. Are people concerned about their savings right now more than they were 6 months ago? Yeah. Why are they willing to spend more money for a house right now in the craziness of the world? Interest rates are low, affordability, and they've got this demand of like, I need a house. And that house I just fell in love with and I walked through, guess what? 10 other people want it too. Now it's an emotional buy. I'm okay pushing this price up, right? And then they justify it around low interest rates, which is justified. But the point I'm trying to make behind this is active listings are down, supply is down, but arguably our demand is higher than it was a year ago, even in the midst of what's going on economically. Now we're very fortunate that we live in the state of Utah because and I'm going to show you this, is compared to what's going on in the rest of the world, there's a lot of positivity going on here in Utah. And arguably this is actually going to infuse our economy in the long term, because a lot of people are now asking the question of like, why am I living around all these people? Where should I go? We're going to see, we already have a huge net in-migration. We're going to see more of that. Weaver County, you can see is similar. Pending listings isn't up as much. You can see active listings, again, down 46.4%. Pending listings up 2.32% from where it was a year ago. Keep in mind that when we passed around the sign-in sheet, if you want a copy of these slides, make sure to sign that. If you're on Zoom, just be sure to put your email address in the chat box and Jackie will jot those down for us. So let's look, anytime there's the blue graph, this is specifically coming from the state of Utah. UAR does a great job of putting the statistics together. One thing to keep in mind with this though, is anytime we're looking at the UAR stats, it's 1 month back. So even though they're very good at getting us information, it takes a little bit longer than what we're seeing on the red graphs. The red graphs are up through the end of June, blue is up through the end of May. A couple things to look at here is across the state, new listings is down 6.1% from where it was a year ago. It was interesting to me to see in May that it was down 16.5. So I'm always looking at what happened specific to the month compared to year to date to see, are we trending back in the right direction? Are we closing the gap? Or are we spreading the gap? Which this would indicate that in May we were spreading the gap. However, June, we started to see some more activity come together where we're starting to close that gap again, where there's a chance we could catch up on 2019, depending again on what happens economically, depending again on what happens with unemployment, depending again on what the next stimulation package looks like. So there's some things we don't know, but if we can look at June and show that it's closing the gap, there's a chance we could catch up on new listings. Here's the question. If we do catch up on new listings in the next couple months, we catch up to 2019, is it sufficient for the demand that we currently have in our marketplace? Still not. The one thing we got to keep in mind is we had an inventory problem before this economic downturn, right? If you look back at the historical trend of building permits in the state of Utah, from 2010 to about 2009 through 2013, we saw building permits plummet, yet we saw a continued growth in the state of Utah. So prior to this economic downturn, we were already trying to play catch up on a lack of inventory. This is just creating more pressure on that problem for us. Pending sales, up 6.1% in May, down 1.3% for the year. Closed transactions down 22.3%, down 6% for the year. Just to give you an idea on this is if you take through the end of May, so 5 months, 20,348 minus 19,120, that's 1,200 transactions. If you did the math real quick, this is how my brain thinks. 1,200 transactions at an average price of, what's the average price up there? 375,000 times an average commission of 2.5%. How much money is that? Like $11 million in commissions that didn't happen this year, that did happen last year. So one of the things I'm always looking at is the total agent population. One of the things we talked about at the beginning is there's a huge, the range is widening of a real professional real estate agent versus the agent that got their license and they're like, I don't know what's going on, right? That's widening. So we have to increase our skill set. But here's the idea. If there's $10 million in commissions that didn't happen through the first 5 months of this year, are some of those agents feeling pain now of questioning, one, am I willing to do what it takes to become the best? If they weren't already to do it, chances are a lot of them aren't willing to do what it takes in an even more difficult market. If they're not making enough money to make ends meet in real estate, what's likely going to happen with a lot of those real estate agents? They're going to find their way out of the industry. What does that mean for this group? That means that there's going to be an opportunity for more money when the market starts to turn around. I emphasized when, and now I'm going to emphasize the word if. You're poised and in a position to pick up more market share. So one of the things you got to start thinking through is, do I have the skill set that matches tomorrow's market? Number one. And am I properly leveraged to take on more market share as people are moving out of the business? Because if people are moving out of the business and they have a little pocket full of people that are committed to them, their aunts, uncles, friends, regardless of how maybe not good they are in the industry, they've got a pocket of people that are still committed to them. Who's picking up that market share? It's not somebody that's really, really good but too busy. It's someone that's really, really good and has the capacity to take on that market share. So one of the things I'm preaching right now is increase skill set to tomorrow's market. Where can I leverage that I'm poised to take on more market share? For someone that puts together that magic combination, in a year from now, 2 years from now, your business is going to be significantly bigger than it is right now. Let's look at a couple things here. And some of these things I'm going to breeze through pretty quickly, and I'm just going to include them in the slides that go out so you can study them on a little bit deeper level. This shows you new listings. It's always interesting for me to kind of say, okay, how's it trending this year versus last year? So like you can see June 2019, 6,800 versus the prior year was 6,938. So it's interesting to kind of walk through how's it changing year over year and the percentages where we were very small changes. Then all of a sudden March, we were on track. Remember when we were talking to March before COVID hit, like we're on track to have the biggest real estate year ever. Breaks, shifts. We started having these experiences of things dropping from the feast, all driven from uncertainty. Realistically, here in Utah, it's not driven economically. It's driven from uncertainty. Pending sales, closed sales, again, down 22.3%. The question is this: how many of you have been out with buyers in the last week? Most of you. Here's the question that I would ask. If there was another 1,000 listings that came on the market, how quickly would those listings go? We have more buyers than would even eat up if we had the same amount of listings we had last year, right? This is a good problem to have. When we go back to the supply and demand curve, I would rather be sitting in a situation of, oh, I got to just figure out a supply problem. I'm going to go strategically create supply. Other than, man, we've got so much supply. Like all these houses that people want way too much money for their money, and there's just no demand. Like that, I've played in that market, and there's a ton of money to be made in that market too. It's a harder game, I think, than what game we're playing right now. Days on the market, we see this dropping significantly. Average sales price, again, very, very interesting. Again, one statistic on its own does not tell a whole story. A minute ago, when we were talking about the client's perspective, man, have you noticed there's way less signs in the yard? People don't want to sell their house right now. People can't sell their house. People, whatever they're drawing the conclusion, yet here we are, we're increasing. The amount of money people are willing to pay for a house is increasing right now because that demand and that pressure on it. So this is one thing I think we do have to be aware of. Is it's interesting that and I'll show you here in a second, our affordability index rate has actually dropped from where it was a year ago, but prices have gone up significantly, balanced out by the other indicators of affordability. And I'll show you the slide on it in a minute. But the biggest player, the biggest unknown in affordability right now is people's income. And that's the thing they're most nervous about. So I'll show you that graph here in 1 second. This is no surprise. Percent of original list price received has stayed pretty consistent, close to 98%. Just real quickly, specific to Davis County, you can see that in May we were down on new listings 21.5%, closed units down 13%. In Weber County, very similar story. Percentage of units listed which sold, 87%. So again, this is historically the highest it's ever been. Yet right now, what does the consumer believe about what percentage of homes listed sell? They think 110%, right? They think just throw a sign up and it's gone. Well, even in the hottest market known to man, it's only 87% of homes listed sold. So one of the things we need to be talking about is creating this as part of our conversation, either meeting them at the junction and helping them understand it, or specifically if they're already at the point of a conversation around a listing appointment, is we need them to help them understand that 13 out of 100 people are not able to sell their house, yet they decided that they needed to sell their house to get them to where they wanted to go, but they were unsuccessful in doing so for some reason. And then talking through that. This number becomes higher on for sale by owners, right? The other thing to look at is, even though across the MLS, the sales price versus list price is close to like 97%, 98%, that's the average across the board. So specifically for majority of people in this room that are closing significant transactions, for the most part, are you selling above, at, or below list price? Above. So if the average right now is on the MLS is 97, 98, that means if you're selling above on a lot of your transactions, that means there's people on the MLS that are selling specifically or significantly below, right? So this is where we illustrate professionalism. Because if we just say, if we say to the consumer, like, hey, right now everybody that lists their house is getting about 98, 99% of list price. That story on its own illustrates the wrong thing to the client. Is to help them understand out of 6,000 transactions that have already happened this year, that's the average. So there's a big broad range of that. My statistics, I'm just making these up, but if I was in a list appointment, I'd say statistically this year, on the list side, we've sold houses at 106% of list price, because there's a strategy to drawing in enough buyers, creating activity around it, and they bid the price up. We've been selling at 106%. Which if the average is 97 or 98%, and my average is 106, that means there's a lot of agents out there that are selling significantly lower than list price because they're not taking the proper activity to draw the activity around your listing. Now, I'm assuming because you have me sitting in your house today that you want to sell your house in excess of probably what it's worth today. Is that right? Weber County, 85%. To me, I would have this part of my listing packet, and then there's a lot of things I have in my listing packet that I don't necessarily cover every time, but I'm gauging. As you guys know, we've moved away from the idea of the listing presentation. We call it listing consultation now, because we don't go and be like, you'll be permitted to talk at the end. For the next 45 minutes, I'm going to talk about me. That was the way. That was the way it used to be done. Not anymore. Now it's very general. Let's learn about you. We meet at the junction. We ask questions. And then I'm saying like, oh, okay, let's talk about this. Let me illustrate this to you. Okay, good point. Now let's talk about this, right? Let's get specific to the client. A couple of interesting things. One of the things we're constantly looking at is as you guys know, as the number one real estate brokerage in Utah, the number one real estate brokerage in the United States, what got us to be number one is not what's going to keep us at number one. And one, I want to thank you guys for your patience right now as we're shifting and moving a lot of things, but it's all for the purpose of protecting market share for you moving forward. And we know that change is difficult sometimes, but change has to happen. So what we're always gauging are the changes that we're making, the energy and time we're putting into changes, is it creating the results that we anticipated? Because a lot of changes we make today are to try to generate the results or protect the results of tomorrow. And so one, we always compare our numbers to ourselves. Number one is, how are we comparing to where we were a year ago? And then we also like to compare against our competition, because we feel like a lot of our competition, while they're implementing a strategy, is a significantly different strategy than what we're doing. And so we like to gauge what's going on with this. And I'll show you a couple of graphs around this. KW is still very, very strong in total market share in Davis County. You can see we're at about 11% market share, where our next competitor is at 9.4. And then the next one down is 7.2, and you see this significantly go down. Is there anything specific on this graph that stands out to you? Okay, great point. That's exactly what stood out to me. Per the MREA model, what do we think is a healthy business as it relates to what percentage of listings compared to what percentage of buyers? A good business is pretty close to 50-50, right? 60-40, 55-45, somewhere in there. Because if we're properly, and I know the argument right now is like, why don't you have time to market my listings? But there's strategies around, for every listing I take, I should be generating at least one buyer. Maybe not the buyer for that property, but I should be generating a buyer somewhere, right? So one of the things I'm looking at here is our yellow, which represents the buy side, is growing, and our list side is shrinking. Okay? Is that true for everyone on the graph? Specifically, Homie, right? So now this is not to open a conversation, because I've been cornered by, I'm not anyone in this room, but I get cornered by agents that have a lot of steam to vent around Homie. It's a business model, right? Any business that comes in the market, right? Like, for example, you see me, I'm wearing an ear pod, and I'm not listening to music right now so people can hear me. But when AirPods first came out, this was my reaction. Like, why would anyone want a earphone without a cord? They're going to lose it, right? That's silly. Yeah, here I am. Spent $300 on a pair of AirPods. No, that's why I'm only wearing one. I don't know where the other one is. No, that's not true. But the idea behind this is it's a business model that came out, and whether it's the right business model, we have to recognize that they found some consumers that are leaning into that value proposition. Now, my argument is this: I am a realtor from top to bottom. That is who I am. That is in my DNA. I believe in the value a real estate agent brings to the table. I will never deny what we do as a business. I believe, for the most part, the majority of us come to a transaction and a relationship with the right intention of heart of taking care of people. Now, granted, there are some agents that give us a bad name, that are chasing the commission, aren't taking the time to learn, aren't taking the time to grow, and realistically, to be frank, they're not doing a great job of representing their clients. But there's a good chunk of us that we're passionate about it, and nobody can replace what we do, except what's happened is somebody's come in to say, realistically, do real estate agents do all of those things they say they do? Are they really that fiduciary at a high level? And this is the problem right now, is there's been enough poor experiences, or enough people talking about the poor experiences, that it's created a reality for some people to a point where they would rather say, I want to go a cheaper route than work with a professional that can get me more money or help me navigate the issues of a transaction. And the only person to blame is not a bunch of turquoise billboards. The only people to blame is us, because we expect them to know the story when it's our job to tell the story. And that's one thing we have to get better at. We have to tell a better story, because I believe in our value. Real quickly here, something that's very interesting is, while a lot of our competitors got caught in limbo and struggled and didn't know how to navigate the market, KW, we outperformed the market by 24.71% in June in closed units, just in Davis County. That's a big number. Like, just so you know, when we see like a 5 or 6% outperform the market, we're celebrating. But in a very difficult market, we showed up 24.71%, That's a story you should be telling. And if your business did better than that, you should be telling that story on top of it. It's one more layer to the 7-layer bean dip. This is actually, it says Davis County. I'll fix this before I send it out. In Weber County, we outperformed the market by 9.13%, which is also a very, very strong number, right? We're very excited about that. We're at 12.3% market share with even a bigger gap in Weber County than we have in Davis County. Our next competitor is 8.9%. So the thing that makes me happy here is we look at the green as compared to the yellow. It's a healthier proportion. But one of the things you'll notice is Homey has not showed up in the top competitors of Weber County. But if you go back a year, they weren't a top competitor in Davis County yet. They hadn't showed up on the map. So they're migrating their billboards, right? So that's one thing we have an opportunity, particularly here in Weber and Davis County, to start telling a stronger story more often and better than anybody else to protect the market share other than trying to regain it back. This is also an interesting graph that one of the things I kind of look at is that it graphs us against all of our competitors. But I like to look at where we were a year ago. And you can see kind of what happens with a lot of our competitors of what has happened to their market share over the last year. You can see with KW in units, we've stayed about, and this is across all the MLS, not just Weber and Davis County, we've protected our about 10% market share, where a lot of our competitors like Berkshire, Century 21, Coldwell Banker they've all gone backwards in their market share. Now I know they're doing a lot of things right now to try to combat against that, but it's just interesting to me as I rub shoulders with them to hear our strategy versus their strategy is significantly different. And this is again where I want to applaud you guys for leaning into and giving us some grace around change. Is the answer to the equation from a brokerage level and from a agent level. Got my car out there. From the agent level is our knee-jerk reaction is we want to do more of the old. Well, I'll just do more of what I've always done. If I need to increase my business, well, that worked for me before. I'll just do more of that. Where I want to encourage you to say, how do I do it differently? How does the consumer want it done now? And how do I do that? Which is sometimes a little bit more painful than just doing more of the old. But I think that's an important piece. And I think the biggest thing that sets us apart from our competition is our competitors are, let's just do more of the old. Let's preach more of the old. And we're saying the world has changed from a technology standpoint, through COVID, the virtual standpoint. The world's not going back on that, whether they come up with a vaccine or not. It's what are we doing to progress forward? So if you're not already leaning into that conversation, please do so. We won't dive into this graph, but one of the things I think is really interesting to have this at your disposal for a quick access, because even though we have a lot of people moving in from other states, and one of the things that you should go look at is a website called Where Money Walks. And it will show you right now where money is coming to Utah from. And it will tell you like specifically what states, what counties they're coming from to the state of Utah, which our increased aggregated gross income is one of the highest in the country of people coming to the state. Not only just people coming to the state, but the types of people coming to the state and the type of jobs they're bringing to the state. And then you could drill down on there to say, okay, well, specifically to Weber County, where is everyone coming from to Weber County? And we'll say, oh, from Salt Lake County, this much money's coming. And from Utah County, this much money's coming. And from Nevada, this much money's coming. But it's interesting to understand that. But this sheet is to understand that a lot of people that are choosing to move to Weber and Davis County are coming from Salt Lake County, Wasatch County. And it gives you a quick snapshot of like, what is their understanding of the market? What's happening in the market they're coming from compared to this?
Can I make one really quick suggestion around this? So if you're going to take the time to go to this website and see where this is, and if you're going to do some studying, take it one step further. As I'm always telling you, like, take the one step further. Take the one step further, go on command, go into the referral map, and find referral partners in those areas. And if you've never done that, it is so easy to do, and you can dial it in. So you can say, I want to know who's a referral partner in San Francisco, or where the money's coming from, and you can zoom into it and see how many units those people have sold, how many referrals they sent, all those things, and create a partnership with them. So take it one step further. Hey, I live in Weber and Davis County. Did you know that you guys had X amount of people migrate here this year? This is who I'd love to be your referral partner. This is what I do. This is my business. And
create that relationship. Don't even just send it as a message. I mean, send it as a message initially, but reach out and create a relationship with those people.
It should be one of your lead sources, right? If we have a net in-migration of 40% now, and it's probably going to get closer to 50 to 60%, that means 5 or 6 out of every 10 buyers is going to come from out of state, but they're probably going to call their real estate professional first to list their house. And if they already have a relationship with you, just be like, oh, would you like to talk to my partner in Utah? And it's just an easy connection. This is in same thing, looking at the same graph, but this time it's volume compared to units, just looking at what our market share is. I don't spend as much time on volume just because I think volume's overinflated a little bit. And one of the things to take into consideration is sometimes we are blinded a little bit by the amount of money we're making because we get paid for the most part off of volume and not units, but our volume is increasing at a faster rate than our units. So we got to be aware of that. Yeah.
You mean how many walks?
I think so. Is that where you went?
Yeah, how many walks?
Oh, what did I say? Oh, how? John, fact checker, thank you. How many walks? Oh, just out of curiosity, I wonder if there's a website, Why Money Walk. Now I want to ask the who, what, where, when, and how questions. Why? But oh man, I was supposed to have the best jokes. I just lost. I know, right? I am the first to admit my jokes are not good, but I laugh at them. That's all that matters. I am.
Hey, Marcus.
Okay, let's go back to this. Yep.
Hey, we just
Jackie,
have
go.
a comment here that they cannot hear the comments from the room.
Oh.
So if you can just repeat them.
Oh,
Thank you.
when I said what they want to know what the joke was on Zoom because I couldn't hear them. When I said Why Money Walks, he said it's divorce. Pretty funny. Okay. I thought it was funny. Supply demand. So here's where we start talking about how do we affect this, right? This is, we think we react to what's going on in the market, but we have some control over what happens. And so let's talk a little bit about supply and demand. The question is which one will move first? Will supply increase or will demand decrease? Or will they move at the same time? Or if they move at the same time, will they move proportionately at the same rate? These are things we don't know, but we can start to predict how things will move to some extent based on what we do know. And then asking good questions around it. And then how does that apply to the specific situation of the client? So let's talk for a minute around demand. So here's some things to consider with what's going to affect demand right now. We all agreed at the beginning of this conversation, there's a lot of pent up demand, right? But within that pent up demand, there's a lot of reasons. I just moved to Utah. I need a place to live. I have no family. I can go live in their basement. There's some people that are saying like, man, I'm making more money than I've ever made. I want to upgrade. There's some people that are like, I have to move out of this house, but I got to buy something smaller because I need a place to live, but I need out of this big mortgage payment. All of that falls into a level of demand, but they're all different reasons behind demand. But here's some things to consider around demand that we're going to dive into. One is unemployment. Is that going to continue to go up? Or are we going to start to see that soften? Will another shutdown make that go up? If there's no PPP loan or stimulus package, did that save a lot of jobs that realistically should have went away? These are all things we need to be thinking through. Job growth. What does job growth look like in the state of Utah? Affordability, population growth, and consumer spending. Let's dive in specifically around demand for a few minutes, and then we're going to talk about supply. Housing affordability. So interesting, at the beginning of this year, we were looking at, finally, we saw this happen. Affordability index went above 100. That would start to suggest an affordability index of exactly 100 suggests that we're a perfectly affordable market, meaning that about 30% of a median income is needed to buy a median priced home at current interest rates. So you can see that we actually started going down. February, March, April, May, we are at a 98. So still right about that 100 mark. But what are the three things that affect affordability? Interest rate, median income, median price, right? So looking at those three, let's talk about what we know has happened. Let's start with number 2. Median price of home. Is it going up or going down? It's going up significantly right now, right? Interest rates, up or down? Can you believe what interest rates are right now? It is nuts, right? So is it realistic to think interest rates are going to go lower than they are now? Now, keep in mind, a year ago, I asked the same question, and they're like, there's no way, and here we are. Shows you how much I know. But there's, at some point, they're not never going to be a negative interest rate in the U.S., I should say.
Some kind of return. So after the servicer takes their piece, which is generally fixed, and the securitization, Wall Street people take their piece, the investors whose money this actually is are getting clean to the point where they're like, am I ahead of the game to just stick this in the bank or buy treasuries or whatever? I don't think that investors get to keep the whole lot more than are.
Good. That's a great point, right? It goes back to the principle we've all talked about. By an investor saying yes to this, what are they saying no to? At some point, they're going to be like, my money's safer over here, or making money over here at a better rate, right? So great point to that. Median price home we know is going up. Interest rates we know are at a historical all-time low. Median income. What's median income doing right now? It depends on who it is, right? Let's talk about a nurse. Nurse, like they need medical people right now, right? Probably going up. Teachers. It's going up. Could change if you know schools go half-time home. Like we don't know what's going to happen there, right? Maybe they need half as many teachers at some point. We don't know. So part of this is when you meet, remember that picture of the intersection? When you meet someone there, it's who? Who are you meeting? What is their circumstance? Because this is where there is no one recipe that fits everybody. We got to have a recipe box, right? So median income, there's a lot of things that are uncertain around median income right now. So for example, is everyone here aware of what the PPP loans package is? So this trillions of dollars went out and was given to businesses to say, keep people employed. Keep people employed. Are they still giving those loans? The money's gone, right? So part of the package there was you only get this money if you keep people. So a lot of people stayed employed for that reason. But as soon as it gets past a certain point, the government then says, well, for you to still keep that money, you have to do it through this point. After then, we don't know what you're going to do. So there's going to be a lot of people that if things don't get better significantly and quickly, there's a lot of people that are going to be like, hey, sorry, we're just, people aren't coming to our restaurant. People aren't coming to buy things. People aren't shopping in the stores anymore. We can't keep you. And a lot of those people are going to go, even though I'll show you what unemployment's done. The question we don't know is right now, the graph I'm going to show you is unemployment did this and it started to decline. Is are we going to continue to see it decline? Or if we see another big shutdown economically, are we going to see that even surpass what it was before? So there's a lot of things we're questioning around median income. Median sales price, we don't need to have a conversation on that. Population growth, we all know that our population is still growing at a very fast rate, and I would argue that it's going to grow at a faster rate over the next couple of years. There's a lot of people in these bigger communities, like you look at New York, San Francisco, LA, where they have a lot of people in proximity. Some of them are migrating out now, but a lot of them are going to have to wait until someone clears the path for them there to say, oh, okay, now it makes sense for me to sell, but they're going to be questioning where they want to live next. And the other piece around it, Christy made a comment earlier that she's got buyers that their parameters right now are like, we want a house somewhere in the state of Utah. We work virtually. We're going to see more and more of that where people aren't making decisions of like, well, what's the commute time to my job? Or is there public transit to my job? We're going to see more and more people be like, doesn't matter where, right? Did I hear Breath like a comment here?
I was just gonna say like 100% because I've got people right now that are moving out of the state because her job has gone 100% virtual and it's not going back. So she doesn't physically have to be here in the state of Utah. So she's like, my family's here, this is where we want to be, so we're gonna move because I keep my exact same job and I don't ever have to go into an office. So it doesn't make sense for me to live here. And I think you're gonna see the opposite of that too. You're gonna see people flooding here because we have wide open spaces, have a great place to live. Like, we live in an amazing state. I think you're gonna see more and more.
So one of the things that, just to divert a little bit, one of the things that I think is really important is asking better questions. Because you're not, we say we sell a lifestyle, but part of that has got to be understanding what lifestyle are you merging into, right? 'Cause most people's lifestyles are changing right now. So we can't sell them a result based on their current lifestyle, but we got to ask questions around what is the lifestyle you're trying to create. So for example, one of the biggest, hottest selling items in the world right now is e-bikes, right? Anyone in here have an e-bike? So e-bikes, you have to order them in advance. It's hard to get e-bikes right now. But the idea behind this is I believe that we're going to shift back to the idea of people saying, well, I don't want to get in my car and go down to Starbucks around all these other shops. Because I want to hop on my e-bike and go to my neighborhood coffee shop, my neighborhood bread shop, or my neighborhood market. Like, we've migrated away from that over time to these bigger shopping centers that we could drive to in 10, 15 minutes. And I think we're going to see more and more people be like, I just want proximity to, like, what are the things I go to? And I just want to hop on my bike and go. I can get there, I can not be sweaty. It's an e-bike. We're going to start seeing that how neighborhoods are constructed and built by developers are going to change, I believe. So let's look at unemployment rates. So in the state of Utah, we've already started going down to 5.1%, which, like, if at the beginning of this year, if you would have told me we were going to get to a 5.1 unemployment rate in Utah, I would have been like, have you been watching our economy? There's no way. But the U.S. is currently at 11.1%. This is where it's interesting. We're leading the country in job growth rates at negative 2.8%. Okay. So yes, that's a negative number. Just to give you some better perspective around this, is we've been leading the country for the last several years. We've kind of been racing with Idaho and Nevada on this, but we're normally looking at like 3%, 3.3% growth as leading the country. And right now we're leading the country at negative 2.8%. The U.S. is at negative 0.87, meaning they're losing jobs right now, which, again, one thing we don't know is how many jobs would have been lost if that stimulus package would not have come out, right? So again, the big unknown is, as those funds run out, are people going to have enough confidence in the market to be spending money, discretionary funds again, to keep those jobs? Or are they spending that money, discretion money right now, because they haven't felt the pain? If you think about how most people change their spending habits, they don't change it in anticipation of pain. They change it when they're in pain, right? So one of the things to consider is, even with all these people that have gone on unemployment, one of the parts of the stimulus package was they increased the take-home pay by $600 for people going on unemployment. For some of these people, that was a raise from what they were getting in their job. So in that scenario, not to say everyone did this, but if for a lot of those people, if they all of a sudden were making $600 more than they were making in their job, what do you think they were doing with that money? Spending it. For some of them, right? Some of them were putting it away responsibly, not knowing what was going to happen. But this is all things that we got to watch, of like, okay, what's going to happen here in relation to if I'm working with someone that they feel like their job's really at risk, or their employer's walking around being like, I don't know what's going to happen when these funds run out. Like, the answer to them is going to be different than someone that's like, man, I'm more in demand than I've ever been, and we're outgrowing our house. Like, that's a different conversation. We just got to be better asking the questions and having a better understanding. I'll let you look at that one on your own. I want to look at this. This graphs the unemployment rate over time. So this is Davis County. Weber County is the green line here. but it was really interesting. Over time, we've had just historical low unemployment until all of a sudden here, just look at the skyrocket, just boom, way up. But we're already seeing a little bit of people going back to work. And part of this we have to think through is furloughed employees, which were people that were said, we're not firing you, but go home without pay while we figure out the PPP. And then they were brought back. So they were unemployed, then employed again, but might become unemployed again. Some of these people were people that used the PPP and then fired them, but then they went and worked for someone else. Like there's a lot of scenarios here that move, but this is an unknown for me is like, are we going to continue to see this come down? And right now, the majority of the projections contingent upon not another major shutdown is they're saying it's going to take a decade to get back to the unemployment rates that we were at before. So we're going to see a spike down like this, and then we're going to see it just taper off and slowly come back. But they're saying that some of the reports are saying it's a decade full recovery from what we've experienced.
One of the things, Travis, I minored in finance in college. When we studied unemployment, one of the things they said is that there's always about a 4%, they call it frictional unemployment. Basically, most economists believe you couldn't get below 4% really. We've been below 4% because people have multiple jobs or they get a job and they'll work for a while or they quit on Friday, start on Monday, that kind of thing. We have had such a good employment picture for so long. Part of it is that we don't even know what a regular employment picture looks like, right? Our economic, like you said, I can't believe, at the beginning of the year, our economic picture was so strong. I couldn't believe that it could take the hit that it's taken. And we might want to recognize that for the last several years, 4 or 5 years, we've had so much better an employment picture than we've ever had.
Yeah. Great point. So just to repeat that for the people on Zoom is Dane's making a comment that we don't really have a clear picture of exactly what our unemployment picture has been historically, because obviously it's hard to measure on a day-to-day basis. But to add to that, one of the things that we've talked about before is because we have so many people moving to the state, that a lot of people that move to the state are coming for an opportunity, but don't know what the opportunity is. But while they come, move, and then find the opportunity, they're in that unemployment that was 3%, right? So it's like, is that true unemployment, or is it just a transitionary unemployment, right? So this could shed some light on what, particularly if we don't get back in the positive of new job growth, is we might have this might shed some light on what is a true unemployment rate stability for the state of Utah. Yes.
I was just gonna tell you, if you're in the audience, please talk really loud, or Mark has booked down in the middle of the room that they can pick up your phone. Or Jack.
Oh, to pass it around. Too many germs. Interest rates again. We won't spend a lot of time on interest rates, but one of the things I talked about last time, that if you didn't take the time to learn how to have this conversation, it's really important for you to do this, because the consumer right now is really bought into the idea of, I cannot believe how much houses are, right? Granted, some of our out-of-state buyers are like, this is a bargain, but any homegrown buyer is like, seriously, they want $400,000 for this house, where my parents bought a house in this neighborhood and it was only $85,000, right? So there's major sticker shock going on. The people need to understand affordability is not just price. It's your ability to buy, what you'd have to do for housing otherwise, and what interest rates have an impact on you. So one of the things I talked about last time is not just saying like, hey, you're an idiot, you should understand interest rates better. It's saying, you might be right, let's discover this together. You need to have the ability to say, let's put together a mortgage calculator and say like, okay, just for fun, if things continue to go bad in the economy, in a year from now, how much do you think the economy will go down? The majority of them, there might be some, doomsdayer that has a bunker in their backyard. It's like 60%. It's going to go down by 60%. But the majority of them are going to be like, it could go down 10%. On a $400,000 house, that's $40,000 that could save me. Okay, well, let's run the number that, let's say you're right. I'm going to show you some reasons why I don't agree with that, particularly in the state of Utah. But for fun, let's look at it to say, does it make more sense to buy a house at $360,000 at interest rates in a year from now that might be 1% higher versus $300,000 today at lower interest rates. And they'll be surprised to see that in most cases with interest rates what they are, it makes more sense to buy at a little bit higher price now, particularly if they're in a long-term play, right? If they're going to hold the property for 5-10 years, almost always right now, it's going to make more sense to go now than wait. Okay, so if you haven't practiced this conversation, practice it. If you need someone to coach you through it, let someone on our leadership team know. We'd be happy to do a class on it or sit down with it, but this is a really important conversation to be having right now. Here's a couple things I found interesting as it relates to demand, is watching demand is driven by consumer confidence, what people think about what's going on in the market. And that shows up in a lot of ways prior to them buying a house or selling a house. It's what else are they spending money on? I thought these were some interesting graphs. U.S. air travel right now is in April and May, almost 100% of travel went away through air travel. You can see that it's gone up, but it's still at 78% down from what is a normal air travel schedule, right? Are there people losing a crud load of money right now in travel and industry, right? It's really crazy. Like for me, like I had to cancel a 3-week trip to Hawaii. I'm wondering, like, how is Hawaii surviving this when the majority of their money is coming from travel and tourism, right? It's crazy, but it's interesting. I actually flew for the first time last week through all this. It was interesting. Change in requests for directions on Apple Maps. So we're all trained now to pull up, oh, how long is it to here? Where's this restaurant? Where to go? You can see that the change in 7-day averages of people's requesting things and what they're requesting, April, May, everyone was buried in quarantine. No one was looking at their Apple Maps. We saw that start to increase, but interesting that we're starting to see that taper off again with a lot of people talking about, hey, whoa, there's a spike in cases. What are we going to do? So this is something to kind of watch of what people are doing here. John.
Back on the airlines, all the pilots are unionized. They have to have a 90-day notice that they may get people. Where Delta had Delta issued notices to the bottom 21% of their pilots, they will most likely be let go in the fall. So if you have pilots in your database, reach out to them, see how they're doing. United did the same thing, and I know the other ones are working on it.
This is a perfect example of one of the things I wanted to illustrate today is we got to be a student of the market, and then we can't just be like, well, that's interesting. We've got to know our people to the point of saying, okay, well, who in my world does this affect? What conversation can I now have with someone that I can come be the hero of the conversation, right? Great point. U.S. home purchases. This is actually year-over-year change in mortgage applications. So this isn't actually the number of transactions that happened, but I thought this one was really interesting because this is April, May. People freaked out like, whoa. We're going to stop filling out applications for loans because we don't know what's going on. But that the pressure of the demand was so great that even though in April we were still right in the middle of it, of the first shutdown, the demand put so much pressure on it that people were like, regardless if the world's coming to an end, I still need a place to live. They started filling out applications. And you can see June and July, we're in excess of where we were a year ago of people filling out applications for loans. So this is, keep in mind, listings down, closed units down, 20%, nearly 20% more applications out there. That's a good question. Applications for purchasing. I would assume this is just for purchase based on that, but I don't know. But but that's interesting to me. That's something we could dig a little bit more in because there's a lot of people probably taking advantage of refinance. So I don't know if this includes refinance or not. That's a good question. Mortgage Banking Association Purchase Index. Yeah. Jackie, make me a to-do to study that a little bit. The Mortgage Bankers Association Purchase Index. And then I'll find out and circle back. That to me is interesting and shows me that the buyer demand is going to keep putting pressure on our market right now. As long as, and some of this could be people saying, I'm not going to be lendable in a year from now. If I lose my job, I got to get this done now. right? So there may be some of that piece to it too. Hotel occupancy rates are only 40% of full occupancy. Restaurant bookings are down. So these are all things to think through. The question is okay, if people's income go down a little bit, but they're not spending money on travel, they're not spending money on restaurants, do they still have the ability to buy? Maybe. Or is this an indication that they don't have jobs, they have no income, and they need to sell? So these are all things to be thinking through from our standpoint of how does it affect the overall story. So we talked a lot about things that can drive demand. Let's talk about supply for a minute. And this one is more of where the action steps, where the rubber meets the road. So the questions that we need to be asking now is, we are all in agreement that demand is high right now. There are a lot of people that have buyer needs. The biggest problem they have is not enough homes to choose from. There's probably, I would even argue, there's people out there buying houses that aren't even their dream houses, but they're like, guess what we'll do? Because it's got the number of bedrooms I need, and now I'm getting excited about it because 12 other people want it, right? Like at my house, my 7-year-old daughter will walk away from her quesadilla like, I'm stuffed. And as soon as one of her sisters wants it, she's like, well, I'm not done. I want that. So the idea behind this is we are doing the industry a huge disservice if all we're going to do is wait for the phone call of someone saying, hey, Marcus, I'm ready to list my house. Because the problem is there's many more people out there that if we could clear the path or get a better understanding where they want to go, right now they're like, I don't know what to do. But it makes sense for them to sell right now, particularly when in some ways, our market is overpriced. There's an opportunity for them to get a higher price today than possibly when supply starts going up and demand starts catching up with it, prices are going to stabilize, right? So there's a huge opportunity for them. What are we doing to create the conversations around listings? If number one is, are you not doing it because you don't see the picture? Are you not doing it because you don't know what to say? Or are you not doing it because you don't have time, I'm just too busy? Any thoughts on that?
Loudly.
I know for me, I started doing some videos, and my concern has been that the message to sellers and the message to buyers are vastly different. And sometimes I find myself trying to figure out how to thread that needle, to not scare away buyers and make it sound like, hey, look, people are paying this amount over appraised value even on homes, and then a buyer hears that and goes, ooh, maybe I do need to wait, And
great point.
So
That's what I tell people too, is to look at your history of waiting, what it was here and what it is now. You could have thought, you could have got 10,000, or now it's even more than that in the last 6 months of equity if you would have bought when you were here.
Yeah, and to your point though, I think this is a very important point that I'm trying to really hit home today, is one size does not fit all. And by trying to play the one size fits all, you're pushing all away, right? So one of the things I would encourage you to do is, one, I applaud you for doing video, but and I would say, okay, well, who am I targeting with this? And what is my message? Is it going to repel or attract? And so there are messages we can do by video that are going to be more general type messages, that then you have a call to action where then you get to drill down. Okay, this was the general message. Now let's refine it down. Specific to you, it looks like this, and specific to you, it looks like this. So we need to do that more of a general message in a way of creating curiosity, and then you come with curiosity too of what's specific to you. And then the other thing I would say is make sure, in addition to video, that we don't shy away from what we're really hitting home on right now, is the importance of two-way communication. So we can't run the risk of just being like, I'm going to blast out an email, I'm going to post a video, and they'll call me if they want. That's only got to be a part of the strategy right now, because they don't know what to ask. They don't know how to react to generalities. We've got to drill down and ask better questions, Because it's just like when I walk into Nordstrom and I have every intention of buying some cool outfit or whatever it is, or a pair of pants. The minute I walk in, someone walks up to me and says, "Can I help you find something?" What do I say? "I'm good, but I need help. That guy's way more stylish than I am. He's going to pick out a better pants than me." But I'm trained to say, "Nope, I'm good." Our people are the same way. We've got to drill down and ask better questions. Okay, two-way conversation. Don't just lean on video alone. Christy, did you have a comment?
Add on to that is really having to understand that we are in health markets. And it's our job as a market expert to help them understand that I tell my clients, like, you are in a specific market in your neighborhood. Your friends are in a market in their neighborhood. And we are in so many different markets right now that you really need an expert that's guiding you through that you can be buying and selling in a seller's and a buyer's market.
Yes.
And ask me, to educate you on that. So be very generalized and to understand that we have all this happening and it's specific, whether they're selling or they're buying.
Yeah. So Christy's comment is there's so many different markets out there that we've got to give specific advice to the market they live in. Because looking at a macro market of the U.S. is not accurate. Even looking at a statewide is not accurate. It's neighborhood specific. One more quick comment from Dane, and then we got to keep progressing.
Nothing else, putting selling virtual stay that way. And then to work from anywhere. Have you ever thought about living somewhere less congested? Have you ever thought about living somewhere where the air is, if you did nothing else but say you could live anywhere and geography is not an issue, engage their imagination where maybe they haven't thought of that before. I had some clients who moved from Clinton, a crappy house in Clinton, to one of the nicest houses in Cairo for essentially the same payment because they could do that because they went virtual. And if you did nothing else but that, you're helping to create the supply.
To this point is we got to get away from safe questions. One, we as an industry, I put myself in this boat too, is the majority of us really shy away from calling our people, even people that love us. It's really weird. We don't want to call them. Second, when we do call them, we want to be able to pat ourselves on the back afterwards to be like, "Good job, I made the call." So we play the call safe. We ask safe questions. "You guys doing good? Your family happy?" "Oh, so glad to hear it." We get off the phone like, "Did my job." What I challenge you to do is we need to ask probing questions. Dane just gave an example of one, of saying they're going to give you the safe answer, then you got to ask a question that's going to make them think. They've already pre-prepared to give safe answers. Probing questions, they can't give safe answers because they haven't pre-thought of it. They've got to give honest answers, right? So I want you guys can each think of what would be some specific probing questions that you could ask. That being one of saying, "Hey, I think you could agree that the world's changing. A lot of people are going virtual. Just out of curiosity, if your job went virtual, how would you feel about that? Would you want to work from home? If you did work from home, where would you want to live?" Right? These are all things. And then also, I play the Phil Felt Found. You guys know I love the Zig Ziglar script. Is, "Hey, while I got you on the phone, a lot of my other clients I'm talking to right now are all working virtual, and it's caused some interesting conversations of them thinking, well, if commute doesn't matter, I want to live in Mountain Green. I want to live here." Just out of curiosity, if you moved virtual, because all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, other people are making that transition. It's not my realtor trying to trick me into moving," right? New construction. So this one's going to be interesting. Right now, we still see a lot of new construction going on, but we've seen a lot of builders kind of hesitant on that next piece, right? Generally speaking, while a construction company or a developer is finishing out one neighborhood, they've already got ground broken on the next neighborhood. So we're seeing a lot of, some of these developers are still going gangbusters, but a lot of people are putting projects on hold of like, wait, we're going to see what happens. They're extending deadlines on these properties of like, we don't know what funding is going to look like. We don't know what, if construction companies are going to get shut down. We don't know what that looks like. So we got to be aware of this. Construction's still going good right now in the state of Utah. We got to watch permits. We got to watch development. So if there's like a specific city you follow, a specific area you follow, now is a good time to get involved with city council and just be going to the meetings and asking, what are we approving? What projects are we looking at? That's a great way of getting a feel for what the construction looks like in that specific area. Here's another, the next two, fear of retirement homes and millennial sticker shock. If you look at the overall number of transactions that happened in the U.S. last year, about 5.5 million transactions happened last year. About 33% of those were first-time home buyers. Of the 33% that were first-time home buyers, a good chunk of those are millennial buyers, right? So if you think through, what does it do? What portion of our supply of a healthy market has come from people moving out of their house they've been in for a long time to go to a retirement home, which right now are retirement homes increasing the number of people in them or decreasing the number of people in them? They're actually right now, they're decreasing because the number of COVID cases, the risk of being in the retirement home, several months ago, they were increasing. People wanted to move into them and there's beautiful ones. Now they're like, I'm not going in there. I don't want to be in a room with a bunch of other at-risk people, right? So this could soften, but there's a lot of people being like, I'm going to stay in my house by myself for a little bit and see what happens. Those are houses that are not coming on the market and may not be part of the solution. Millennial sticker shock is too. A lot of these millennials right now have the less time in their jobs, might be, I don't know this, might be more susceptible to be laid off first because they don't have the longevity in their jobs. They might be more, have a little bit more fear around the market because maybe their parents lived through the last downturn and they saw some of that. So all of a sudden, this unknown might be a little scary to them. So there's probably some of this millennial sticker shock going on that affects supply and demand. So these are things that we need to be thinking through of like, let me really get a better feel of who my database is. Let me segment them out into categories. Now let me play the conversation of what are the questions and concerns they're having. How would I address that for this group? Okay. How would I address that with this group? We got to get away from one vanilla message. A couple quick comments on commercial. I've got 6 minutes left.
Yeah, we got it left.
I got 5 minutes left. I'm coming. Warm up. I want to make a couple quick comments on commercial. So in commercial, there's retail, there's industrial, there's office, there's multifamily. Retail, some of the things to think about, and I don't have really solid answers on this, but these are things that we should be watching. With retail, all of a sudden we're seeing, like, if you go to Station Park, all of a sudden there's more activity going on, but there's limited hours, there's less transactions going on, there's more sales trying to draw people in. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with in-store retail and how many people renew their leases, how many people, particularly if there's not another stimulus package, what happens there. So we need to keep our eye on what retail does now and then how retail rebounds if more people are going to push towards online purchases. Industrial, we know that online transactions, because disposable income has remained pretty close. People have been spending money, right or wrong. They've been spending money, but they've been doing a lot more through Amazon and other online purchases. This could actually draw some more demand on industrial space because they need, as they increase the number of online purchases, they need more places to store product. So I anticipate that we're actually going to see a decreased demand in retail space, depending on where it's at, an increased demand on industrial space, depending on where it's at. And then office, this is a really interesting piece. I think that a lot of people that told me they would never work virtually, would never want to get on Zoom, I think we're going to have a hard time convincing them to come back. We've got more people on Zoom watching this than we have in this room. Probably pretty close. But we've got 30-something people on Zoom right now. So the idea behind this is space is different. It's going to look different. So that idea is saying, okay, well, is there going to be less demand for office space? Some of the biggest companies like Fidelity had a monster building they were building in New York. They just called it. They're like, I think people are like wanting to work from home. It was a several billion-dollar project they cut. Lastly, multifamily. This is one that has been a little confusing to me for years. A lot of you guys know I play in the multifamily space, but it's been interesting to me, these really high-end multifamily properties coming, which really targeted this millennial group of like, I want luxury. I don't care if it's a small space, but I don't want to take care of every yard. They've been attracted to that and they've paid high dollar for it. Well, if COVID is here to stay for a while, or if people have a fear of multiple pandemics coming behind it, we might see a move away from this, people being like, I really don't like walking up the stairs and touching a handrail that 50 other people touched today that I don't know. or I can't even use the fitness facility and the pool that were part of the reason I came here. Why am I here? I can go get a house for the same payment I'm paying here and create space. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I anticipate we're going to see some of that move. So I am, this is my personal opinion, I think particularly here in the West, we're overbuilt on high-end multifamily, is my personal thought, okay? So there's a couple thoughts. We'll wrap up with this. Think uncertainty to certainty, create the path. So this is the idea that I want you to take away from this. I'm going to send out the slides. I encourage you to pull up the slides and look at the data and say, is my skill set sufficient enough that I can go have a conversation with someone in a way that I can help them self-discover where they want to go and then help get clarity on what are the actions they must take so I can clear the path for them to move from uncertainty to opportunity, which lives in between certainty and uncertainty. Because there are a lot of people out there, I feel, that makes sense for them to have a transaction this year. They just don't know. They need a guide to get them there. Okay. Any last questions or thoughts for me, John?
Check the numbers on the mortgage applications that not included.
It does not include? Awesome. Thanks. You saved me an hour. Any other questions or comments? Was this helpful with what's going on in the marketplace right now? Okay, awesome. Do you want to introduce our sponsor?